All right, welcome to Cwic Show. My name is Greg Mattson, and I am your host. In this episode, we're going to talk about demographics a little bit. You know, demographics have a real effect, obviously, on culture, on anything. And we see, for example, in the church, there is right now a lot of change in demographics in the West, in the United States. We're becoming a little bit more, we're moving to the left in the United States as every institution is, right? Every institution culturally is moving to the left. And yet, the greatest growth in the church is coming from Africa, the Philippines, and family-centered areas like Latin America, which are kind of anti-secularist and anti-academia and much more conservative. Now, that's not what I'm talking about in this episode, although that is something we're going to be talking about soon. But one of the other demographics that is dramatically affecting the church, I believe, is that of gender. And that is that we have so many fewer men in the church as we move forward. And anybody who's been on a mission knows that, you know, it's more likely that your chances of baptizing an adult woman as compared to an adult man is higher. I went to Latin America, I went to Mexico on my mission, and many, many times we've got a single adult woman or a mother or a single mother or a married mother, and it was her and her kids that were the ones that were getting baptized into the church. So you have number one, the growth of the church in conversions is driven more by women than it is by men. Secondly, I think that in the West, and especially in the United States, the numbers for the 18 to 30-year-olds that we are losing are catastrophic. And this is something else I need to go over in an episode. But the numbers they're horrific. And where do we find the worst side of that? We find it with the men. The young men are not staying in the church. Why? Why are they not staying in the church? What is happening? We know definitely that critical social justice, identitarianism, is something that is definitely pulling the youth and the young adults away. And it is contrary to the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's contrary to the doctrine of Christ. And it makes especially younger individuals, younger adults, look at the church through a different lens, which is oppressive and misogynist and many other things, right, through these identitarian lenses. But on the flip side of that coin, what are we doing to attract men to the church, to keep them in the church? This is the great concern, I think, that we should be looking at. How do you build priesthood? How do you build families without men in the church? It is statistically proven that children are more likely to stay in the church if they have an active father. The mother has much less of an impact. It's just the way it is. For whatever reason. It's not that her sacrifice or her efforts don't matter. But for whatever reason, the children are more likely to stay in the church if they have an active father in the church. So what are we doing there to keep men in the church? We look at all these changes that we've made that seem to be, accommodating to a certain faction of women in the church. Let's be honest. And, and that's fine. I think that, getting women more involved in leadership, making sure they've got a voice, I think those are really important things. And I'm happy about that. Those are good things. But look around your chapel when you go to church. How many single men do you see in the pews? How many single fathers do you see in the pews? When you compare the size of the elders' quorum to the Relief Society, what does that look like? There is a problem here, and this is not just toward the men, it's for the women. And the reason I'm bringing this up tonight even is because I got another message from a listener, and this is, I've had, I mean, this may not seem like a lot, but I think it is. I've probably had half a dozen or more messages from women over the last year in person when I go around and give lectures, or if or sent in through my website, contact page, and email. And the basic question is, where are the men? And I don't think they mean quantity. Right? I mean, that's part of it. But where's the masculinity in the church? Where are the men that step up and bear the burdens and protect emotionally and spiritually and physically? Is that the message that the church gives? Is there an issue with some of the messaging to men? We keep putting out these continual messages, just like our culture does in the West, especially in the U.S., toward women. Okay, great. Where are the messages toward men? Where are the challenges to the men to take on responsibility? Where are the teachings of the fruits of being a spiritual man in the gospel, of being like Jesus Christ, taking on the burdens and being fulfilled in that sense, having a fulfilling male experience in the church? I think we're sliding more and more away from that as the culture slides away from that. Look at the schools. And if you were to go to an award ceremony at a high school for your kids or your grandkids, I can almost promise you that you're going to see probably an outrageous ratio of girls getting the scholastic awards and other awards over the boys. Boys are failing in schools. Fewer boys go to higher education. Fewer men go to graduate school. Everything is becoming built more and more to accommodate women and less to accommodate men. And there's probably an argument there that the church in the U.S. is doing the same. I mean, we are products of our culture. What are we doing to keep the men in the church? What do we do to challenge them? What messaging do we specifically have to men in the church? There seems to be in our culture in the West, and again, in the U.S. specifically, a kind of a systemic patricide that is destroying boys and men. The suicide rates are through the roof. Depression is through the roof. The challenges are not there. And we move more and more to this message of kind of instead of a message of strength and personal responsibility and overcoming, we oftentimes are, what I get feedback from is we move toward the idea of a teddy bear Jesus. This is supposed to be the hero. And I don't think that we are getting the right messaging out there in the culture, in our Sundays, in our communications. We need more men There needs to be a masculine sense of belonging in the church for men, where they are fulfilled. Their masculinity can be fulfilled in the church. This whole idea of toxic masculinity, which really just means get rid of masculinity, that's all it is something that I think is infesting the church as much as anywhere else. Are we setting low expectations for men so that they don't feel the challenge? Are we not challenging the boys and men enough in gospel principles? Where is the message of personal responsibility and fulfillment for men? These women that have come to me and said this, that's really what they mean. Where are these guys? Why aren't they in the church? And that's the question I have, is that gap. Why is that not, to me, the greatest sense of masculine fulfillment comes with a family and service, putting your arms around others and helping them to grow and to learn. And yet, I think, and I think that most men have that yearning. Most men want that. So why would that? There seems to be an irreconcilable difference there between the church and many men. And I'm wondering, everywhere I see the messaging from organizations in the church and from the pulpit, it's we're lacking a masculine message, I believe, and it's not good. It's not good. If we already have more women that are converted to the church than men, and then we also lose from existing members more men than women, tell me how that ends well. What is going to happen with that? That doesn't end well with the women either. Because they're going to be saying, where are the men? Where can I find someone who's going to be a good husband and a good father and is going to take on the responsibility of being spiritual and holding up the doctrine of Christ as a masculine view of their world? I had I hope I didn't say this already in a podcast, because I know I talked to somebody about it, but I can't remember if it was on a podcast or not. It's a couple times I was involved with the young men's, and I know liability is an issue for the church, and so everybody's afraid to do certain things. Oh, we can't mess with that. Liability is an issue, but to some degree, you've got to help the boys have some adventure. Right, you got to help the boys have some adventure. And I had a couple different times I took the boys out, the young men out, and one thing I've done with my boys a little bit is boxing. And so, I've got some really nice, I used to use these for marketing actually, but I had some really nice boxing gloves and some headgear and other things. And I took the boys out boxing when we did an overnighter. And we set up a little ring, just in the dirt, a ring, and had the boys box each other. And we had, in this one event, we had a deacon, really kind of, a very scrawny guy, very scrawny little deacon, skinny little kid, who was terrified. He was terrified. And it just took some talking to him. I just had to talk to him a little bit and said, listen, you're going to get hit. It's okay. Right? It's okay. And you might take a punch or two. You're going to be fine. No one here is going to wail on you. And I didn't put him up against a 17-year-old. Right? And it's like, get in here and enjoy it a little bit. And it's when you do this, I learned the same thing in baseball when I managed baseball forever. It's when you get over the fear of the ball, the whole world changes for that boy. And so this kid got in there finally. He did it. I mean, he's almost at tears. And he got in there and got hit. and he got hit again. And then we went a little further, and he moved in, and he had another partner, somebody else he fought against, and went in. And, we're managing it to a certain degree, of course, here. I know that some of you out there are like, I can't believe you did this, Greg. But I'd do it 100 times over. I really would. The kid ends up having a blast, an absolute blast, because once he got hit a couple times, he was over the fear of getting hit. It's like, okay, this is what this is. Now I get it. And so he's out there hitting and hitting and hitting, and they're just, it's just an exercise. They're having a great amount of fun as they do this. And this kid, I am just telling you, he was so excited. He had a huge smile on his face. He had never gone through anything like that before. Why? Why? And I know that's going to be a big deal to him. I want one more example. I think I did this on a Come Follow Me podcast a couple years back, but it's just such an important lesson, I think, for us to learn. I managed Little League for years for my boys and a travel baseball team. And this one day I had a kid on my team who was, you've got 12 kids on the team. There's 9 positions. You have 3 that sit out, and then you swap them out, but everybody bats, right? So this is one of the kids that didn't get out on the field as much. He wasn't one of the better hitters, and he was a really small kid, the smallest kid on the team. And we are out there, and we're about mid-season, and we're facing the toughest pitcher in the league. And this is a big kid. And he is heaving the ball. And we're striking everybody out. And, it's just what he always does against every team. We got a decent team. And he's just striking everybody out, And so I'm managing at third base. That's where I would be, right? So I'd be at third base managing. And my dugout is behind me. And it comes time for this kid to get up and hit. And I look over at him, and he's got tears running down his face. And I just thought, uh-oh, this is not good. This is not going to be good. And so I walk over to him, and I pull him aside, away from the other boys. And I just I got down on a knee with him, and I said, look, you can do this. You can do this. I said, I don't care if you get a hit. It doesn't matter if you get a hit. That's not the win here. The win here is that you just get the bat on the ball. That's it. If you can get the bat on the ball, then that's all that matters. And I said, all I care about is don't move. You do not move your feet, because that's what most boys will want to do when you got a pitcher like that. The first thing they do before they even get ready to hit is they start taking their front foot and they start stepping out of the batter's box to get away from the ball. And then you're done. I mean, as soon as you do that, you're done. And I said, that's all I care about. When you put your feet down, promise me you're not going to move your feet. I don't even want you to take a step. All I care about is that you swing at the ball, because this kid threw strikes almost consistently. Almost every ball, every ball he threw was almost always a strike. And I said, all I care about is that you get that bat on the ball. And I said, look, you can do it. You can do it. I know you can do it. So he gets up there. I mean, you got to give the kid credit. He gets up there, and I'm looking at him, and I'm cheering him on, and he's in the batter's box, and he watches the first ball come through. He doesn't swing at all, but he didn't move his feet. And I knew it. As soon as I saw that he did not move his feet, I was like, this kid can do this. I know he can do it. So he got another one. He swung early at the ball. He foul tips it, right? Foul tips it. And then the next ball, and keep in mind here, this is coming up to the middle of the game. We've had one hit, right? One hit. on this picture. This kid hits the ball, grounder, but pretty hard for his size. It goes to the second baseman. He does get thrown out, but by about a step or two. And I just can't tell you enough what I saw next. This kid rounds first base, and he puts his hands up on the sides of his helmet, and he's running with his hands up on the sides of his helmet with this massive smile on his face, all the way back to the dugout. And see, I know that kid's going to remember that the rest of his life. And Teddy Bear Jesus that's not what that's about. You know, we've got to be able to give a message of strength and overcoming and responsibility to these boys and to men in the gospel and in the church, or we're going to be in trouble. I mean, the numbers of the men that are leaving the church and are not getting baptized into the church is a problem. But we keep coming out with more women's programs, more this, more that, and there's more and more single women in the pews. And again, it's not that that's a problem as far as the women's programs and the women's messaging. But what are we going to do? What are we going to do with no men and without strong messaging to those men and a strong culture and brotherhood in the church for those men? That's a problem, I think. It's kind of like you've got, I mean, honestly, to some degree, right now, there seems to be kind of a Stockholm syndrome for some men in this very feminized kind of way of how the direction of church culture is going, with everything to do with the therapeutic Jesus and the tolerant Jesus and the teddy bear Jesus. It's concerning, right? Is Jesus a victim or is Jesus a hero? And how do we get that messaging out to them? Anyway, just my thoughts on this. This is a problem for women as much as it is for men in the church. I know they want men in the church. They need men in the church. And I believe that we need to consider how we do our messaging in the church to build a culture of brotherhood and build a culture of challenge and strength for men to have more of a sense of fulfillment in the culture of the gospel and the culture of the church. Thanks for listening.